Okay, so really good question was just asked, and that is if you decide to study architecture or something like that in the future, are you going to use something like this drawing technique? Yes, absolutely. I don't know. I'm not close enough to that industry to know like how much has changed as far as like hand drawing versus computer aided drawing. I'm certain there are elements of both. And what is particularly useful about knowing perspective drawing, whether you are going into a field like architecture or not, is once you are aware of how linear perspective basically trains you to use a vanishing point, even if you do not get out a ruler and do the exact lines every time, it still orients you as to like if you're going to draw a landscape or if you're going to draw anything that is simulating a real life environment. You instantly think about that. Okay, where would the vanishing point be? How would things line up to that? So even if you do it semi-informally, being able to know how things line up will make a humongous difference. Even just things like being able to keep your verticals and horizontals aligned properly. The more you do it with the ruler, the better trained your eye is to do it without the ruler. And so what people usually ask is, do we need to use a ruler every time we do perspective? For this project, yes, because we're, documenting and demonstrating your knowledge of the technique. That's what we're grading. But beyond that, you will be able to apply these with or without a ruler to anything that you do that is three-dimensional. And it will make a big difference in your accuracy as well. So for a lot of people, when I draw something for a demo or when somebody draws something and you think they draw well, many times what they're doing is just utilizing perspective techniques to show some sort of depth and dimensionality. And that's what comes across to people as good drawing or realistic drawing or accurate drawing, etc. So, good question. Thank you for asking. We ended yesterday right before the drawing of the arch. So yesterday we drew this window, or the square that will eventually become the window, right? The big thing in perspective is being able to take the guide box and actually transform it through the use of details. So this window would need, I have something in my eyeball. It's making it really difficult to multitask right now. It would need some trim, right? Sometimes we have added like a windowsill or a shelf or something like that. Like always be thinking like what other details that are three-dimensional could help give a sense of the space or give a sense of the object that is more than just, this is kind of the equivalent of a stick figure window right now, right? Because it's just single lines. But it's a good start and it gives us that placement of the accurate perspective. Okay, so anyway, without further ado, we have our center. We went up from the center, and then we extended that rectangle up to meet the height of that center point. And this, we just chose how tall we wanted that, right? That height is arbitrary as long as our line is actually vertical. So once we have that, this rectangle here is our guide to make the arch. So we know that our arch is basically going to touch the top of that rectangle. And we know that our arch is going to also touch the side of each side of the rectangle. Okay? The trick here is being able to draw what's called a quarter round. So it's basically a quarter circle.
And you free draw some sort? Because you can't really.
Well, yes, I'm free drawing it, but I'm free drawing it within the angles of that box. So that means that this rectangle, if you look right here, this side of the rectangle is much bigger than this side, right? And why is that again? Why is this side of the rectangle bigger than this side?
That side's closer to us.
Because this side is closer to us, exactly. So that means that this side of the arch will also be significantly larger. And if you're like me, there's a pretty good chance you're not going to hit that curve exactly right on the first try.
That curve looks weird.
I'm breaking a rule right now by erasing first. Normally I say correct your line first and then erase.
Does it have to like smooth out at the top of the dot, or can it like
Here?
make like a point at the dot?
It can make a point.
Okay.
Yeah, you can choose that. The trick is getting it to look even from side to side. Typically, like I write with my right hand, so to make this curve is easier because that's the way your hand naturally goes. To make this curve with a right hand is more difficult. So as you're practicing, that's what's going to take you more practice is those curves that are the opposite way. So be kind of watching that, okay? The other thing that you can think about, this was a technique that I was taught actually for not just drawing curves and arches, but also for scene painting, of all things, which I call the airplane landing and taking off technique. Okay, the name needs a little work, but question?
Yeah, do we erase the like little box around the arch? No, not yet.
Eventually, yeah. Once your arch is in place and good and you're satisfied with it, then yes, you would erase all your guidelines. So that goes for your X, your height line, anything but the window itself, basically. Yes, you would erase that. But the airplane taking off and landing strategy here basically says that, okay, let's go with this line. If this is our ground line, right, and you have a plane, this is our plane, your plane is going to go, right, and then it's not just going to, like, go straight up, right? That's not how planes work. Instead, it's going to go, and it's going to gradually lift off the surface, right? Well, look at what I just made. This is exactly the same, right, as what we just did here. So you need to think about your plane or your line or your curve or whatever it is, right, gradually coming off of that surface, right? And then as the arch goes back, it's going to do the exact same thing, right? So as your plane or your arch comes back, it better not be coming along and then just drop straight down. That would not be a very good plane ride. So it's going to gradually touch down, right? So think about that as you draw the line. It's kind of like when you're learning to drive, and if your driving instructor ever told you to think around the curve more than you actually turn the steering wheel. It's very similar type of strategy, okay? So think about that. The most common, I'm going to say mistake or weakness that early drawers do when they are drawing arches is they make this too pointy and not gradual enough that it would go across the whole thing, okay? So that means, like, if they were going to draw a full circle, sometimes they look a little diamond-y instead of actually round. So that is something that you can practice, though. It definitely gets better the more you do it, okay? Let's take this window now. I floated the idea of a windowsill, or like a little shelf at the bottom, right? Could be a window seat, depending on how tall your window is. If this line is vertical, and this line goes to the vanishing point, right? What is our only other option for the direction of that line for that window shelf?
Vertical.
This one goes vertical. This one goes to the vanishing point.
Horizontal.
Horizontal is the only other option. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit. Okay,
What are we making again? A shelf?
a shelf. Could be a window seat. They are exactly the same concept. So I'm going to make sure that my paper is straight for you to see, because that might make it a little easier. And then I'm going to make sure my ruler is actually horizontal. Literally check for horizontal or vertical or whatever your direction is every single time. Like, you need to take the time to make sure that it's accurate. Okay? I'm going to go out from this corner, however deep you want that seat to be. If you want it to be just a teeny tiny little trim thing, make it shorter. If you want it to be like an actual bench or a storage thing, you could have it go out further. Okay? And then from here, we're going to go back to the vanishing point. And then at some point, we need to cut it off wherever that stops. That's going to be horizontal from this back. And we know it's going to be horizontal because the front of this shape is horizontal. And also because we already have a vertical line here and a vanishing point line. So that's our only other option.
So we make another horizontal.
Another horizontal. Check for horizontal back there. Those cutoff lines, your brain is going to want to mess with you. It's not, it just happens. It takes a while for your brain to figure that out accurately.
Can we erase the lines inside of the box?
You could erase the lines inside the box, yep. So, for me, that would be all of
Is
these.
it okay if our tip isn't inside of the big box and it's like outside of the big box?
What's outside of the big box?
Like the tip of ours.
This? Like if it extends forward?
No, like the edge. Like you see how you have like a point in your big box?
Point in my big
Yeah,
box.
like a little triangle.
Here?
No, like inside the big box.
When you say big box, what are you saying?
Like
The window.
no.
The back wall?
Yeah.
So if this overlaps onto this,
Yeah, like your tip of
Right
your
here.
seat. Yeah.
so this overlaps onto here visually because of where the viewer is standing.
What if mine landed?
We would see this as overlapping this, but it doesn't actually touch it because, in my case, this is still on this wall.
Yeah, what if my like
If the point of yours
yeah.
overlaps, that's okay as long as this part doesn't go into the wall. So let me give you an example. If this kept going this way, okay, that now is going right through that wall, right? So if I wanted this to go longer than the window but stop at the wall, I would have to stop it at this line.
Yeah, but what if your like tip didn't land in the big box?
That's okay.
Okay. So then you would just erase everything that isn't the tip.
Erase everything outside of it. Yep. So in my case, that would be these lines. Yeah. And you bring up a really good point in that not only do you have to know what lines to draw, but you also have to know what lines to keep and which ones to erase. And sometimes that can be equally as confusing. So you're asking really good, thoughtful questions that show that you are thinking in the right direction. Now I'm not gonna erase my horizon line through my window because it's a window, right? I want my window to be transparent. If this is not a window for you, if it's just like a panel, or if you want it to be like some built-in shelves or something, then obviously adjust accordingly. Yes, sir.
Can we erase our vanishing point inside our window or no? Is that what you're just saying?
The vanishing point inside the window?
Oh, well,
Do you mean the horizon line?
Yeah.
You can, that's what I just said. So if you don't want it to be a window, right? If you're not, like right now, I'm looking through this and I'm seeing the outside. This is ground, this is sky, right? So if that's not your intent for your drawing, if maybe that's a window to another room, or maybe it's like a cutout for a shelf, you know, like some shelves that are built into the wall, then you could certainly do that.
I got a follow-up question.
Yes.
For the arch,
Yes.
can we apply the same technique for like an archway, like a doorway? For
Yes.
Okay.
So the question was, can you apply the same technique for this kind of arch, maybe for the door? Yes, absolutely, you can. The same technique is also, like I said, that would also apply if you wanted to draw like a barn or a house that has a peaked roof, where the roof comes up to a point. Those roof lines, you would have your center point on the arch. Instead of making curves, you would just draw a straight line through on either side. Okay, that would be one of those exceptions where those peak lines are not going to go to vertical, horizontal, or vanishing point directions. Good question. So does this make sense for the shelf? Okay, now again, this is just the first step. Like we drew a stick figure, right? In order to make this look more realistic, we would probably add some thickness, vertical, vanishing point, vertical, horizontal. See how it's thick now? Okay?
Did you make a?
And if your corner of your shelf or your seat or whatever this is going to be, if that overlaps your wall, then you should erase the wall through it because you wouldn't see through that part. Even just overlapping and erasing what you wouldn't see can really make your perspective look so much more realistic. Okay, remember, overlapping is one of those informal perspective techniques that you can do without a ruler, but it has a pretty gigantic impact sometimes. Now, if you wanted this to be like a true like window seat where you could like open the top of it and like put stuff in it, right? Like Christmas presents that you don't want people to see or whatever you want to put in your window seat, then you could make this come all the way down to the floor. Stop when you get to the floor, right? Horizontal, because this is the part that's facing us, right? So that's horizontal. Vertical. Vanishing point. Vertical. See how all I'm drawing is, it's the exact same thing that we drew on the other side, right? Literal same technique as all of this. So that's why I say once you know how to do these, you can do all these other things. You just have to know kind of the placement of where they belong within your space. Now we have a window seat, little box. Now, if you wanted to take that even further, let's say we want to put some trim designs on it. Okay, you do not have to do this. I'm just showing you, so I'm going to go a little faster. Guideline. Guideline. Look at how wonky that X feels, right? That's why we trust the ruler and we trust the placement. If we had to guess where that center was, we probably would not guess accurately on that, okay? But that tells us where that center is. So looking for vertical.
Wait, sorry, what are you making here?
I'm just making some trim designs,
Oh.
okay? So if it was on the edge here, I could do vertical, vertical, horizontal, horizontal, right? If I give myself a little guideline there, and then a guideline here, guideline here,
So mine kind of like
guideline
looks like a
here.
chair now and not like a.
If it looks like a chair, it's probably just shorter this way
Okay.
and tall. That would be, it's the exact same technique to be able to draw a chair.
Okay.
Like the difference between a chair and a bench is just length or depth, depending on which way you're facing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Will it still turn into like the arch thing, or it's kind of stuck as a chair?
You could just make it longer. Extend one of your sides.
Okay.
So did you see what I did here? So this would be the line that I'm keeping. And this would be the line that I'm keeping. That one could probably go a little bit more that way. Okay, but I found the center so that I would know where to split those boxes up. Does that make sense? And then obviously you would erase that X and all of the extra lines. See how adding those details makes it more real, more dimensional. It kind of fleshes out the idea. Because a box is so universal. You can turn it into anything. You can turn it into a chair. You can turn it into a table. You can turn it into a rug. You can turn it into a door or a window. Like everything starts as a box pretty much. Maybe you could argue that a tree or a person, you know, those very organic shapes doesn't need to start as a box as much. But if you know how the box works, that can make things a lot more accurate for you, because then you fit that person or that tree or that whatever, car, right, within the box, and that helps you get the difference between the near and the far.
What lines did you use to make the boxes on this side, like the two?
These two?
Yeah.
So I drew this square first,
Yeah.
okay?
So you
And I just I didn't freehand it. I used a ruler, but I arbitrarily picked where I picked how thick I wanted this trim to look. Okay, so on this end of the box, I already have vertical lines and horizontal lines. So I knew that was the type of line that I needed to add to make the trim. Okay, then I extended, just as a guide, I extended this line over to this corner because that gave me a point then to connect to the vanishing point. So that made basically this trim the same height as this trim.
Oh, I get it now.
So it's kind of like one informs the other.
Can you make like one box instead of two?
Here? Absolutely. Yeah, that's a personal choice. But can you see how, like, when you're looking at grading, 2 is more skill than 1? Because 2 shows that you know how to use a center.
Yeah.
But yes, absolutely. So you know who uses this a lot is scene designers in theater, right? They're looking up furniture. They're looking up architectural interior design, stuff like that. Wall, you know, having like the chair rails or having the trim, right? All of that is painted in theater. And so it's very common when I'm doing theater work, I'm given a box, like a long platform, and I have to paint stuff like this on it to make it look like whatever decade or time period it's supposed to be from. So we do a lot of that. Other questions? Does it make sense how to draw a chair or a table? What do you think we would start with? Well, yes, lines. We would start with a box. Yeah. So you don't have to do this, but I'll do it, so I'll do it fast, right? I try to start with the part that faces me, right? So because that's usually horizontals and verticals. So what do you want me to draw? A chair or a table? Okay. So a tall table or a short table?
Short table.
Like a coffee table? Okay. So here is a vertical line. Here is a horizontal line.
The bottom space we draw this?
Does it matter what?
Where in the bottom space we draw this?
Nope.
So, for future, how would I draw like a round table? Because I know that's not. I know that's kind of like the same thing with curves.
Yes, good question. I will show you. I'll transform it. So I started with, this is a guide box. I should be drawing lighter than I am, but I want you to be able to see it, okay? This is the part of the table, like if this were a table, it would be this part, the part that faces you, okay? Now I'm gonna connect it back to the vanishing point. And I'll cut it off, let's say back here. You can make it as long or as short as you want. Okay, if you want a really short table going this way, you could cut it off up here. That would be possible. Now we have a box. Now we add details, right? So how thick do I want this table to be? Maybe I'll make it this thick because that's the same as that. And then I'm going to make some legs. Vertical. Vertical. Okay, that's a simple table, but it's still not completely three-dimensional. So now I got to add some thickness to those legs. So vanishing point, teeny tiny little depth line here, and a vertical line. Do you see the difference between this and this?
Yeah. Like, yeah, because it gives. I can actually see the leg.
Yes.
See on one side.
So this one you only see one side of it. This one you see the front side, and this is the part that faces the side. But it's the exact same technique. It's just a teeny, teeny little, in this case, a vanishing point line, and then a vertical line. You can shade it if that helps you visualize. Right? And then down here, this would be erased. We don't need that. That's just a guideline. If we wanted to make this a chair, all we have to do is give it a back, okay? If the back is back here, it's just going to be vertical line, horizontal. Right now it looks kind of like a bed because it's longer, but it's the same concept, exactly the same technique. If we wanted the side, like to be the back of the chair, it would be the same thing. Vertical line, connect it to the vanishing point, right? See how that would be the back? And then I would have to add some thickness. Horizontal, vertical. Right now this is, it's kind of becoming a chair right now because it has a back. Or it's a table with a fence so you don't spill your dinner when things get rowdy. Hello.
In Google Classroom, the how to draw question thing, it has 6 questions on it, right?
Yeah.
But it says out of 12.
So they're 2 points apiece.
Oh, okay, that's just what I mean.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. Now, you asked about how to draw a round table. You take your rectangle. In fact, here. No, I'll do it here. You take your rectangle. Exactly the same thing that we did up here. So you find your center.
Oh, I think I understand. Making a circle.
Right?
You're gonna make those.
You make the center. Now, in this case, we need to do 2 lines through the center. So I'm going to go vanishing point and horizontal because I need those guide points. Okay? Now, of all of these guidelines, the ones that matter the most are this one, this one, this one, and this one. Those are where your plane has to touch down. Does that make sense? Okay? Now, you wouldn't draw big, ugly dots like that. I just did it so you can see it, right? But then you draw your quarter rounds. Make the plane land nicely. Some people say it just kind of kisses the edge. Make sense?
Just like that. It's a round table.
Just like that. And then you wouldn't need these, right? You would make your legs somewhere else vertical from the circle. Does that make sense?
When we're doing our project, if we need the lines can be instead of having to draw really light, could you paint or color over them?
Yes. So when it comes to that's a really good question. When it comes to your project, okay, you're going to do a little rough draft first to kind of just play around with your perspective and planning out where things go. I don't expect that your rough draft and your final are going to be exactly the same. You should expect some shifting, right? But to your point, can you paint over stuff like that? Yes, you'll be able to use whatever material you want that best expresses whatever world you're going to create. So whether that's paint or colored pencil or marker or whatever. However, you need to be very in tune with how that material covers pencil. Because, for example, acrylic paint does not 100% cover pencil. There are very few materials that 100% are going to cover to the degree that you want. So I would still draw light and I would still erase, but yes, you will be using more than just pencil. Question?
Could we just erase our pencil marks and ink them?
Like ink the ones you want to keep and erase the ones you don't? Yes. You will still want to draw light though, so that your erasing is the best quality you can get. Yeah. And that's part of the technique too, honestly, is the pencil control to be able to draw light when you want to draw light and draw heavier when you want to draw heavier, because it is way more satisfying to draw a really light guideline and be able to erase it really clean than to have that frustration of kind of having to cover it, and have your hand kind of forced on that later. Okay? Does this floor make sense? How to draw tiles, or you could draw a wood floor by stopping there, or you could draw a tile floor by going there. Does that make sense? Do you want me to show you?
So, yeah, because are you just going from the vanishing point to the end of the paper?
So here's the trick with this. Here's the vanishing point in this example, right? Do you see the dots here? They measured out these dots first. And they did it on a horizontal because the horizontal is the same distance to the vanishing point. You would never measure on a vanishing point line because we know that as it gets closer to us, things get larger and it would skew all of your measurements. right? But the horizontal is the same distance to the vanishing point. So they measure out first, however big they want their floorboards to be, right? So I'll do that on mine. I'll make it half a centimeter. I'm going to make big obnoxious dots right now so you can see them, but you would want to make smaller dots, right? Now, if you wanted to make bigger tiles, you could. If you wanted to make smaller tiles or narrower floorboards, right? Like if you were going to draw a bowling alley, those have very, very skinny, narrow floorboards, right? So all of those are stylistic choices more than right or wrong. That's just like what sense do you want to give the space. And then through those dots, you want to draw your lines. Now here, that's behind the chair, so I won't draw the part that's behind the chair, but outside of the chair, I would see the line.
Wait, so it still has to connect to the vanishing point?
Yep. Well, it has to line up with the vanishing point. I'm not drawing the part that goes into the wall, if that's what you mean.
Yeah.
But it does need to line up there. And if it helps you to actually draw the whole line so that you can make sure that it's lined up and then just erase the part that you don't need later, go ahead and do that.
Oh, so instead of measuring, you would just do vanishing points at end of paper?
This part I measured. What I'm doing now is just lining each of those up with the vanishing point, and then I'm extending that line out onto the floor. Did that answer your question?
So you make the dots on the floor first, and then connect those to the vanishing point.
Yes, I made these dots first along this horizontal line, and then I am connecting them to the vanishing point, and I'm drawing the part that we can actually see on the floor. Now remember how narrow these dots felt up here? Okay, when you get this way, they look much wider, right? Because things that are closer to us appear larger. So you kind of have to compensate. If you wanted them narrower, like if you drew this and you were like, oh, I kind of wish they were narrower, you could go back and add another dot in the middle of each one and add another line and kind of subdivide that. Okay, this could be your wood floor. If you want it to look more wood-like, you could add some horizontal lines where the boards end and start.
So you're just drawing random lines?
I am drawing randomly placed horizontal lines. Yep. See how that looks a little more wood-like?
If there's something like in the way of the floorboards, you just cut it off and then continue like after it's done.
Yep. If something is in the way, so like this table was here, I did not draw the floor lines through the table because I knew I would just erase them anyway. Now, if it's a glass table, then that makes a difference. But making things transparent can sometimes make it more difficult because it's a lot more lines. And also, remember we talked about when you overlap something, it makes your perspective stronger because you see that something is in front of something else. So transparency can also sometimes work against you in that way. So just some little tips and tricks. If you wanted this to look really barn-like, right, you could add little nails. And notice how I'm making them ovals, not circles, right, because of how ovular they get when you take that circle and put it in perspective. If you wanted to make your tile floor, okay, this one is another guideline. Let me do this. I don't have any tape. Yes, I do. Oh. Oops. How about we do. Good grief.
And then if we want to connect the floorboards, so we just make horizontal lines.
If you want to connect what now?
The floorboards, to make them boxy
Yes.
tiles.
Here's what I'm going to show you. So here's your just gonna pretend it's a really empty floor right now. There is, so you're right, you do add horizontal lines to make tiles, but there is a guideline that we need to put in there so that the tiles are the right shape, or size rather. Because remember, as they go out further from you, they get smaller, and the amount that they get smaller is not just random. Okay? So here is like, if this line came all the way down, right? Here, right here is that corner. Here's the bottom of my simulated drawing paper. Okay? This is one of those rare exception guidelines that is not horizontal, vertical, or go to the vanishing point. Here's the back corner of my floor. Here's the opposite corner. I'm going to really lightly make a guideline. This is very similar to finding the center of the floor. Okay? And now that guideline, where it crosses each vanishing point line, is going to be where we put a horizontal. So here's where it crosses. So I'm going to put a horizontal here. Here's the next place it crosses. So I'm going to put a horizontal here.
And
See how already this one is narrow or smaller than this one? So then the next one, it crosses here. So this is where I'm going to put my horizontal. See how they're getting bigger?
Yeah.
What was your question?
How do you know where the corner is? Like where the line, like down on the corner of like the paper, or like where the lines hit?
For this one, I did use the corner of the paper.
What if I don't have a line that hit the corner though? How would I find the corner of that then? Would it be like
The tile line does not have to hit the corner.
okay? Do I just pick like a line?
Just pick a corner. Yep.
okay, and I just connect that to the vanishing point.
Yep.
Okay.
The point is that it gives you the spacing for these tiles where each one gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Could you eyeball that? I mean, technically, but it wouldn't be as accurate. And then it might make your floor, if you eyeball, particularly on a floor, our brain tends to mess with us and make assumptions that are not true. And then our floor looks all sorts of incorrect. It looks like it's sloped or like it's not going back into space. So this will help solidify that illusion. And then we would erase this diagonal line and just leave the tiles. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Is that helpful? Questions on anything in the interior space 1 point perspective? So 1 point perspective, to recap, you're always going to start with a box, 2 horizontal lines and 2 vertical lines. You're going to make your horizon line somewhere in your scene. You're going to make your vanishing point on the horizon line. And then your interior space grows from that, or your exterior space grows from that just by making your boxes. Does that make sense? Okay. And then whatever you're putting in that space, whether it's buildings or cars or driveways or sidewalks or streets or details on the buildings, if you wanted to make a balcony stick out, guess what? It's the exact same technique as drawing this window seat. It's just on the side of a building instead of on an interior wall, and it's going to be a lot smaller, but the perspective is going to be exactly the same. Okay? And then to elevate those details, to make, you can make a silo, you can make circular buildings, circular forms. You could have chairs, beds. Your bed could have an arched, what's this called? Headboard, right? Stuff like that. Anything that you're going to draw a box first, and then either transform that box into something else or fit your object within the box. Okay? Tomorrow, we're going to shift to 2 point perspective. And it's a little bit of a brain shift from this. Okay? You're going to see why tomorrow.
So are we choosing the project between the two?
You are choosing between the two.
Can I do more
Correct.
if I wanted to?
No.
More what?
Points. If I did like a 4 point perspective.
No. 1 or 2. Because that is the assignment.
Okay.
And that's what I need to document that you can do. There might be certain objects But typically, you don't have that many points that are conflicting with the other perspective of the scene. Typically. Any other questions?
Wouldn't like 4-point be more impressive though?
That's not what she's teaching though, is it?
It doesn't say impressive on the rubric as one of your criterion.
Dang it.
But if that is something like that's a legitimate drive, right? Like you want to do more with your details within 1 or 2 point perspective so that you're really emphasizing that dimensionality and you're drawing, you're really taking it from the stick figure, the box form, like the skeleton guide to something that is fleshed out and more dimensional and detailed. That's a good way that you can do that.